hello, Emily. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I am doing terrible. No, I'm just kidding. Nobody ever says they're doing terrible. Every time you ask somebody how they're doing, they always say, I'm doing good, I'm doing fine.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever asked someone like that you don't know well? Because there's a difference if you're like really good friends with someone or you kind of know someone. Mm-hmm. But what's your typical response when you ask someone how are they doing?
Usually they'll say good or sometimes busy or same old.
Nobody ever says, "No, my dog died."
Never.
My car's broken down. Uh-huh. I feel like you have to be like 2 or 3 conversations prior with that person before they're willing to let loose like that.
Or you have to be like, "How are you really doing?"
Yeah.
And then maybe they'll
absolutely
go a little deeper.
Yeah, and then when you know someone too well, they always ask that. It's never like, "Oh, I'm doing fine," and it's like, "No, how are you really doing?" And then it becomes an interrogation. So. Yeah. That's why you just can't have any friends.
There you go.
Don't talk to anybody.
That's how
ever.
I live life. That works for me.
Yeah, that's a good way to live. But yeah, so for people that don't know you, you want to tell everybody kind of like what you do here at the Jar.
Yeah, so I am the small groups director here at the Jar. I've been doing that for almost 9 years. But I've been coming to the Jar for, I think, at least consistently about 12 years. So I kind of oversee the small groups and then anything like discipleship related, like partner class or like new people, reaching out to them, baptisms, just kind of stuff like that. So and whatever else, needs done at the time.
So how'd you get into doing that?
Let me take you back a little ways of how I ended up at the Jar. Right. So my husband, Mikey, for anybody who doesn't know, he works at the Jar. Well, he did work at the Jar. He's about to transition out of that position. But he went to college with a guy named Isaac, who was like the old Caleb before Derek, which was the old Caleb. He was the old Caleb. But they were on the floor together, and he was like part of like starting the Jar with Chris. Like he was one of the original. So he found out Mikey could play keyboard. And at that time, the Jar just needed anybody and everybody who could help with anything. So Mikey showed up the first public celebration at the Y and played keyboard. And then he liked it and he kept coming. And so we were dating, so I would like come with him on and off, but I kind of had my own church. And then when we ended up getting married, and he started working at the Jar at that point, and then I was like, all right, if we're married, we should go to the same church, and I love the Jar anyway, so started making it a every Sunday thing.
What kind of background, like church background, did you come from?
Did I come from? Mm-hmm. So my dad was actually a pastor when I was little, so he had this like small country church with like. And there were like 5 kids and, so we went there for a little while. And then my dad, he was also trained as a counselor. So he got hired at another church. And so he was doing counseling for them. And we would go like check that church out on Wednesday nights, like during the week. And we absolutely loved it. So eventually we're like, yeah, I think we're going to make this our church. And it was like actually in our hometown. And so that church was like amazing. It was a lot like the Jar, like really open and welcoming and growing rapidly. We went from like a little church to a theater. So that kind of feels familiar. Oh, wow. And then ended up moving out of there to a Big Lots. And so, yeah, it was really a church that really like loved kids and youth and engaged them, and so it was I was there all the way until I graduated. So it was a cool experience.
That was your dad's church that was moving.
That was the one my dad counseled at. Gotcha. So we moved from the small country church to a bigger, more I guess modern church. I guess it was kind of more present day.
And so you said you moved to a theater and then you moved to a Big Lots?
Yeah. Well, no, sorry. A Quality Farm and Fleet.
What?
That's what it was.
What the heck is that?
Next to a Big Lots. So Quality Farm and Fleet's like Rural King. Okay. So they just like tore out the whole thing and remodeled it all, and that became our church. So and I was kind of sad because I like the little chicks. Yeah. You go and see those, and I didn't get to go see those anymore.
Did it smell like them?
Not afterwards, luckily. There were some other weird smells, but not gotcha. Baby chicks.
No, so I only wanted to ask that because like people people that like people that aren't like involved with church or that don't know much about church, like the idea of like doing like these organic, I guess, quote unquote, organic churches where you're like not in a traditional church building. I think that is kind of like a foreign concept. Yeah. It's like, what is that cult that you guys are doing? You know what I mean? But
I never felt like it was weird that the jar wasn't in a church because I never had that.
It sounds like that was completely normal for you, which is kind of different from a lot of people that like I talk to. I feel like most people that like come to the jar the first time, that is the biggest wow factor for them. It's like, what is this? There's just a bunch of people meeting out of at one time the YMCA and now it's the Civic Theater.
Right.
Like, what is this? But yeah, that's crazy that you've done that like your whole life. Wow. So the idea of like actually having a church building is probably kind of weird if you ever go through that. It's
I don't even know what that.
It's like, what is this? Nobody wears jeans here. Like, what's going on here? People wear ties to church. Yeah, it's like completely opposite of like where I started in a small church, about like 40, 50 people. It was a small little Baptist church. Yeah. And like not a lot of people wore jeans. It was like all very, dressed to the nines, do your thing. Yeah. And then it slowly, I want to say evolved, but as far as like casual dressing, it devolved, if that's a word. Well, I mean, just like from where I'm at now.
More dressy, kind of?
No, less dressy.
That's nice.
I mean, my journey kind of like started from a kind of a very small, I would say like conservative church, and then it just slowly evolved into like where we're at the jar now. Like for me and my journey, because the next church I went to, I was like 12, 13, and it was like less small church Baptist-y, but it was like still kind of business casual, and like so that's what I was used to. Yeah. And then like coming to the jar, it's like,
people in their pajamas. It's like
the pastor's wearing jeans. Okay, I can dig this.
Yeah, there you
sound
go.
Like an old person. This is hip. This is jive. I can dig it.
Well, my pastor growing up, his big thing was, so he tried to go to church when he was in high school, and he was part of he was a hippie and into drugs and everything, but with the whole Jesus movement thing, he wanted to try church. And they literally would not let him in because of the way he was dressed. And so he's like, my church, when he started it, he's like, we're never going to be that way. Like, people come just as they are.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really awesome.
So I like that about the jar, that you can just dress how you want.
Yeah. Yeah, the being able to see people in like Colts jerseys or like football jerseys, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is just it's like a barbecue setting, basically. Like anybody can do whatever they want.
Well, and I feel like that like represents, like that's how we are on the outside of the jar, but that's kind of like how people are on the inside too, of just be who you are. Like you don't have to dress up your inside either, like your personality, just be real. So
just being authentic, right?
Yeah, we're authentic from the inside out.
So you were totally normal with coming into the Y at that time, right? Yeah. Basically, how many years was it from like that kind of transition? So you come to the jar, dating. I mean, spoiler alert, you got married to Mikey, but what was that transition like? Like, what were you doing to kind of like step into the staff role at that time?
No, that's a good question. So at the time I was teaching high school math in Connorsville, which is about an hour away. So we were driving back and forth to church each week and to small group each week. So it was a lot of driving. And a couple years into teaching, it wasn't feeling right. Like that school, that situation, I knew like I probably needed to leave, that God was leading me elsewhere, and Mikey and I wanted to be in the community where our church was, like with our church family. So I'm like, oh, what am I going to do? What should I do? I thought maybe I could get a teaching job in Muncie. So one day after church, Chris and Mikey and I were all just kind of like sitting around talking, and I was telling him, I feel like maybe I'm not supposed to be teaching or not at this school anymore, and I don't know what to do. And he's like, well, let me pray with you guys. And he like led us in a prayer, and I felt a little bit better after that. Well, then probably like 2 weeks later, Chris called me and he's like, so we're forming this new position at the jar. And he's like, I think you should apply for it. And I was like, huh. I mean, I just thought I would teach for the next 50 years. Like, that was nowhere in my mind. And honestly, I always said I would never work at a church because I didn't want to be, like, in the Christian bubble and, like, not be around other people. So, anyway, so I'm like,
you didn't want to be in the Christian bubble? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, like,
I'm offended.
I never like all my friends to be Christians and not be interacting with people which the jar is not like that at all. So, but anyway, so I'm like praying about this, like, what do I do? Really like seriously starting to consider it. And I remember I called my parents and I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to apply for this. And they weren't really that happy about it. Like they were a little unsure and that was hard. But eventually, like, they changed their minds. But it was just kind of, I had always been on this path of teaching. That's what I went to college for. So they were kind of like, are you sure about this? So anyway, I did some interviews. Well, did a lot of interviews. It was a long process, like several month process.
Really?
And now Mikey, on the other hand, never had an interview. They just hired him on the spot. So, he's just lucky. But anyway, so I'm going through this whole process. And it's like late July, early August. Like school is about to start, the new school year. And I'm like, I'm not going to be the person who like quits on the first day of school. And then they're scrambling to try to find somebody. I'm like, I got to make a decision. But they hadn't hired me yet at the jar. And, but I knew it was like, it was getting close to the end.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, God, I'm taking a leap of faith. I may not have a job after this. And I called the HR guy and I said, peace out, I'm leaving. Wow. And for probably about a month there, I had no job. And Mikey, had a part-time church income, which wasn't a whole lot. And didn't know it was going to happen. And then, thank you, Jesus, I got the job. And that's how I ended up here. So
now we're ballers. We're making the big bucks, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. No, that's awesome. So I know you said it was like 12 years ago, I think, that you came to the jar, but like how many years into the jar was it when that happened?
Yeah, so probably about 3 years into when I had started coming.
And I want to take one more step back because I am curious.
Yeah.
So you said Mikey didn't really have a job interview. And I know a little bit about that dynamic because like Isaac told me that basically, and I think Mikey has also shared this with me as well, that like basically he would come because Mikey was like, we need someone to help with the band or to like run sound or something. Was there a position before Mikey? Did someone have that position before Mikey, or was there even a position at all?
No, there was no.
Well, then I wonder why he didn't have a job interview. Sounds like we needed that.
Okay, sure. But no, so Isaac was kind of doing a little bit of media stuff, but the reason they hired Mikey was to make like our own small group curriculum as a church. Oh, wow. But then he never ended up doing that. Like he did like websites and media, like all this different stuff. And then, as you know, a couple years ago, we did our first like campaign as a church where he finally was like doing what he was hired to do. And it was such a cool thing. And we're still doing it. And so, yeah.
Well, it's interesting to hear the origin story of that because like I have been at the jar for like 3 years. And all of the things that Mikey was doing before, like I just came in and I'm like, oh, Mikey does this, that, over here, that. Oh, you're in charge of this? Okay, that has nothing to do with your ministry? Okay, cool.
Right?
I'm like, good, gosh, please never leave. But anyway, so that explains it. Okay, so down to the wire, a month, you quit your job. A month into it, you're free falling and waiting on God to catch you, and He does. And so, absolutely. Did you immediately start into small groups? Is that what can happen?
Yeah. So it really the church had kind of they had small groups, but like no one to oversee them, and so it wasn't really like organized. And they're like, I think we really need someone to take that on. So yeah, I got right into overseeing the groups, and I started a women's group right away. And then it kind of led into discipleship and classes, and it's just kind of grown from there. And so yeah, it's been really cool to be a part of.
Gotcha. So like small groups has always been like your kind of passion. Have you ever considered like other ministries being here?
Yeah, small groups. It's funny because when Chris first presented the offer, I was like, I never really thought about like being a small group coordinator or director or anything like that. And then after I started thinking back, and I was like, small groups have always been a part of my life, and probably like the biggest growth engine in my life. So like I remember in middle school, I was in a small group at church, and then in high school, I became part of a small group with one of our youth leaders that it was like a couple, and they were just amazing. Like they taught me so much about like wisdom and faith and consistency. And like there were times where like I was the only person that showed up to small group, and they would do the whole small group just for me. And I was like, oh man, like they really care. And then by the time I left, it was like their house was like packed with people. But they were like, and now they're pastors, actually. It's really cool. They have their own church. But like that was probably the biggest thing in my faith, where like, you know, you have people in your life that they seem like they're all about God, and then they fall away, or the church falls apart, but they've like always been consistent. And I'm like, that's who I look back to when I'm like feeling uneasy. So anyway, so then I like started leading a small group for the middle school kids. So that was a cool way to minister. And then like when I got to college, I started like doing small groups there, and then I became the discipleship assistant, which is kind of like what I do now, but on my floor in college. So yeah, like all throughout my life. And then the first thing we did when we came to the Jar was got into a small group, and like that was like kind of our family, like away from all of our other family in Ohio. So yeah, all throughout my life, small groups have been a huge part. So it makes sense. So that's what I'm doing. I just didn't really like make the connection until later.
Yeah, no, I think I've said it to you, but I always say it. People are probably sick of me saying it, but God definitely has a sense of humor. Yes. He does. He's like, oh, you don't want to do this? Guess right? What? Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is going to be your life. Here you go. Enjoy. So, yeah, so whenever you're down, just know that God did this. So,
yes.
So, no.
He's the only one to blame.
Yeah, right? Absolutely. So do you have
just
any?
Kidding, God.
Just JK, JC. Do you have any weird weird church stories from? Because like not everybody has a whole life in church, and so you have went through different moments in your life. So I'm sure you have something weird. Like I mean, weird stuff. People standing up and like getting mad at the pastor, something like that, or walking out, something crazy.
Yeah, probably the weirdest story, which...
you were ready. Like, we did not talk about this before.
I got one.
It was like, your eyes were shifting as I was saying. I was like, you have a weird story? You're like, oh, which 50 should I share? All right, go ahead. Yeah, let's hear it.
This is why I'm so glad we have, like, live stream and a website. Because I was in college and I was like, I was in Connorsville when I was teaching, and I was searching for a church, and their website, like, seemed really modern. But, you know, there's no pictures, there's no video. Like, it seemed really cool. So I walk into this church, and there's like probably 10 people there, and like I literally felt like we went back in time like 50 years.
Yes.
Like everybody was dressed in like old-fashioned clothing, and like the pastor like spoke all like old-fashioned.
Speaking German or something.
Not quite, but close. And it was just like really weird. And like luckily no one really talked to me, and I just left. And
did like
and
the
that
men?
was it. So they were nice, but.
I guess there were only like 10. So did like 5 men sit on, like did the men and women sit on separate sides?
Probably. It was so long ago I don't remember, but I could have seen that happening. Yeah. So. Yeah, no, like my family, I say like all the time. But like I just did it again. Most of my family's all in the South, Tennessee and Kentucky. And something I've noticed whenever we visit down there, it's like the old country churches, they have their own spots. Like it is reserved, like in the aisles or the pews that they sit, they have like this one in particular. I remember we walked in when we were down there on Memorial Weekend one year, and I walked in with my family. It was just, we were trying out a different church. We were just wanting to check it out, and it was just like landmines of just cushions, like seat cushions for the wooden pews. They were already sitting there, like marked the placement of where awesome.
Everybody
you like
was
reserve your spot.
I thought they were, honestly I thought it was just a free for all. I thought they were being courteous, like hey, here's your cushion. Not the case, Emily. Not the case. People will get mad at you if you steal their seat cushion for their wooden pew, because it's saving their spot. So
Maybe we should do that in a jar, like bring your own lazy boy, like put it where you want. And,
yeah.
I can go for that.
Yeah, we could do that because there's so much room in the Civic Theater. Yeah, just flood the
stick it on the stage.
Yeah,
right?
Put it on the stage. Why not? Let's do that. Can you imagine if someone was like we had what would we call that? Like I don't know, like the MVP section or something like that, and it has like the people that can be closer to Chris while he gives a message, or
like you're playing and people are just like staring at you from like 5 feet away.
Yeah, like a couch up there.
That'd be amazing.
And they just sit there and they're just
yeah. We
chilling.
need to do this. We could sell tickets. Yeah. That could be like our giving strategy.
You're enjoying this. I see.
Yes.
Right now,
so
I'm able to witness a light in your eyes that I've never seen before in my life. This is amazing. Yes. Yeah, I would love that. It wouldn't be weird at all. Just having.
We're doing it.
Yep, absolutely.
No question.
Do you say we'll sell tickets for it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love that. Awesome. So, with all the weirdness and I'm trying to think. So, do you have any other weird stories from churches, or was that?
That's all. I've been pretty lucky. I've had some pretty good church experiences. So.
I think one thing I want to do before I die is go to just to experience the weirdness. I want to go to a church, probably somewhere in like Louisiana or something, that does snake handling.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
just put it on your bucket list.
It's on my bucket list, just to say like I did that. I've Googled a couple that are just. I mean, I haven't like contacted them. Just to. I'm not like seeing if they need worship leaders or anything like that. But I want to be a part of that, just because like I cannot. I've watched enough videos and documentaries about like I cannot fathom what that would be like to be there in person. We're like, like somebody probably with like 6 fingers or something. They're like holding a bunch of snakes. I'm like, let's do this in the name of Jesus. Like throw them. Yeah,
well, if you die, like at least you die doing something you've always wanted to do.
That's
right?
That's the motto I live by, Emily. If you die, you die.
You die, you die.
If you die, you
might
die.
as well do it handling a snake in a church.
Right, that. So speaking of dying, what are struggles that you deal with in life?
Yeah.
I just wanted to go to lighthearted to really deep.
Right down deep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just coming off of this anxiety island campaign, when like the staff and I were sitting around talking about like, who would be a good person to do like a testimony video? Everybody just stares at me.
Yeah, the crickets.
I think you all know, like anxiety is a big struggle for me, which is so. God has a sense of humor because all my life I've had major social anxiety. So what does he do? Put me in like a very social job in a church. Then he likes to put me up on the stage to talk to people.
Puts you on a podcast.
Where you have to
exactly.
Talk about your life. Yeah. So anxiety has always been a big struggle. Like God's helped me through a lot of it, and good counselors have helped me through a lot of it. But it's a struggle for sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that question that I was supposed to ask wasn't supposed to be that deep. It was. I remember I was going to say, hey, what are the struggles that you have faced being like working in church, like just throughout the years? Mm-hmm. And then I realized it was just a plunge right into your deepest, darkest fears. So, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
But yeah, so
I'm an open book.
No, good deal. All right, more weird, awkward questions. Here we go. But yeah, no, that's. I feel like that is super common. Like. Mm-hmm. The more I hear people talk about anxiety or like, everybody has stress, right? But the more I hear everybody talk about anxiety or like, depression, it's like immediately someone else is like, oh yeah, I have that too. I deal with that as well. Yeah. So I don't know what the deal is if like people are just like not as vocal, or maybe because of those things, like because of anxiety, they just are anxious to talk about it or something.
That's true. Yeah.
But yeah, it is really interesting. Those things make you feel alone. Talking about them, though, and hearing that other people have them, it's like you realize, oh, no, I'm not alone. Everybody feels like they are alone, but we all are alone together.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and that's why I love how our whole tagline is, it's okay to not be okay, at the jar. So
absolutely.
We all got our stuff.
There's 3 or 4 of them that I always, I love the, what our motto is, loving people into relationship with Jesus Christ. I don't know why that one has always stayed with me.
Yeah.
Just what that, I think Chris said something one time that, because we were talking about that motto, and he said something that I just thought was really funny. He goes, we'll do anything short of sin to try to care for people and love for people. I was like, that is a very unique way of saying it, But yeah, it sounds corny, talking about, oh, let's love everybody, but like, yeah, nothing could be better than that, right?
Yeah, it's better than like scare people into a relationship with Christ or beat
Fear.
them into a relationship with Christ.
Beat people into a relationship. Yeah, I'm good with that. Let's go ahead.
Bribe them into a relationship with Christ.
I feel like all these are golden ticket ideas. So maybe we should consider talking to Chris and changing our motto.
There you go.
Bribe people in Christ, beat people. What's another one?
Scare them.
Scare them. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
I like that. Scaring
Intimidate
people.
them.
Intimidate. Persuade.
Threaten. Blackmail.
Blackmail.
This is our new evangelism strategy, guys.
If anyone needed to know what evangelism meetings look like, it's this right here. How can we get people into church? Dig up as much dirt as you can on people.
There you go.
And then, yeah.
And if that doesn't work, offer them lazy boy seats on the stage.
Yeah. At gunpoint. There we go.
Wow.
So
talk about weird church experiences.
On that note, what's a verse that you really have near and dear to your heart?
Oh man.
Now this could be the thing. I typically ask everybody this. So Emily, so like, what's something that it could be like your word or like your verse for the year? Maybe it's for the month, the week, the day.
Yeah. No, that's a good question. Probably going back to like my favorite verse, like almost my life verse. Is I believe it's John 17:3. I could be wrong about that, but it's this is eternal life, to know God, and that's always stuck with me. Of like people get excited about like, oh, heaven one day, and there'll be like mansions and gold streets, and to me it's been like just knowing God, that's heaven. Like we can have that here and now. That's everything, to have a relationship with Him.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, that one means a lot to me.
Emily, thank you so much for being with us today and like just sharing the weird areas of your heart here for everybody to hear. We appreciate it. One last question before you go. If you could associate any voice with the voice of God in your mind of what He sounds like, what would you associate His voice with? Oh
my goodness, probably Caleb.
What?
Caleb is the voice of God.
This Caleb? Oh, you can do better than that. you can do better than that.
Or let's see, maybe Barney.
I know I said like thank you, I was wrapping it up, but we're gonna go a little bit longer.
Oh gosh.
So like is that your last answer, or do you have more outside of Barney? Because I have questions on the Barney thing. I'm not gonna let that go.
We'll go with the Barney thing. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the first question I have with that is why? Why Barney?
He's just like, when you're a little kid and you need to feel loved, who do you think of? You think of Barney. I love you, you love me.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
We're a happy family.
That it makes sense in that capacity, but outside of that, in every other facet of life or reality, that just seems weird. It's like, weird. But being like an adult, who else?
Oh gosh.
Outside of Barney, because
the voice
it's a weird one to end on. Yeah.
You know what? I think John Bunch. He's got that deep, like fatherly voice.
He has one of those voices, I would say, like similar to Morgan Freeman.
Yes.
He's just like some people I think were put on this earth to narrate a book.
Yeah.
And
definitely, that is his whole life purpose.
Yeah, and I don't know if he's done it yet, but maybe hearing this, he'll decide to do that.
I hope so.
So I'm glad we were able to figure out the Barney God thing. That was good stuff.
You'll never get that image out of your head.
No, never. All right, so thank you so much, Emily. We
You're
appreciate
welcome.
we appreciate it. Thank you.